We have seen a huge portion of journalists who got killed while wearing the press vests. That is normally what you put on in a conflict zone to be not targeted you. But what we have heard from many Palestinian journalists was them telling us, like, we feel like wearing this vest is basically putting this target sign on yourself.
Persecution, corruption, and even murder. In this summer series, we look at some jaw-dropping investigations done by journalists across Europe. What do their stories reveal about the state of European democracy? And what impact did they have on society and on the journalists themselves? This is a podcast of the investigative newsroom Follow the Money. I'm your host, Emma de Chatinier, and I'm joined by Lise Witteman, founder of Follow the Money's Brussels desk and my co-host for the summer. In this episode, we look at the shocking number of journalists that Israeli forces killed in Palestine. The Gaza Project brought together journalists from Israel, Palestine, and across Europe to investigate those deaths. Was there a pattern? And could some of those journalists have been deliberately targeted? German outlet Paper Trail Media was part of that collaboration. The newsroom later joined another investigation into an Israeli sniper with ties in Germany. Journalist Frederik Obermaier joins us today to talk about what they found and what it was like to do this type of reporting in Germany, where coverage of Israel and Palestine is especially sensitive. Welcome, Frederik. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Could you just start by telling a bit about yourself and the outlet that you work for?
My name is Frederik Obermaier. I work as an investigative journalist based in Germany, in the south of Germany, in the nice city of Munich, together with my colleague Bastian Obermaier, who is, just for the record, not my brother. We co-founded Paper Trail Media. That's a newsroom focused on international investigative collaborations.
Yes, so we will be talking about two of the investigations you did recently regarding Israel's war on Gaza. We'll start with the Gaza Project. Can you explain to us what the Gaza Project is?
The Gaza Project was born several months after the horrible massacre of October 7th, where the Hamas attacked Israel, killed hundreds, among them several Israeli journalists, but also where we then have seen the reaction of the Israeli military attacking the Gaza Strip, and we have seen a horrible number of journalists getting killed. And we pretty soon realized this is not normal. More than 100 journalists being killed. Now we are, depending on what calculation you look at, it's between 200 and 260 journalists being killed in the Gaza war. Then in December 2023, there was an annual forum, that's a conference of an Arab network for investigative journalists, where there was Arab journalists, also some Israeli journalists, Western journalists being there. And of course, there was only one topic, and that was the war. That was the journalists who got killed there, because it was a lot of journalists who attended this conference the years before, but who died. And there was discussion like, shall we do something? Should we go on Blue Sky, on Twitter and social media and raise our voice and be like, well, that's not what we are here for. It's like, what can we do? We can investigate it. Is there a pattern? What is the reason for so many journalists getting killed there? But immediately, also the war is kicked in. It's like, if this is only Western media looking into it, this might be biased. If it's only Israeli media looking into it, it might be biased. If it's only Palestinian or Arabic journalists being there, there might be a bias. So we basically brainstormed, like, how about bringing together a team of all those different backgrounds to investigate it jointly? It took several months then to get it really started, because there was a lot of stuff that I didn't have in mind. For example, that for some journalists in some Arabic countries, it's a crime to work with Israeli journalists. The normal reason is their countries don't have a peace treaty. So how do you even establish communication?
So you had there was this team of journalists from very different cultural backgrounds. Weren't there any, especially with such a polarized topic as the Gaza war, did it just all go smoothly?
There was lots of discussions, but retrospectively, it was very good for every one of us. It was good to discuss how it feels, because we scrutinized our investigation in a way that I have not seen in that many other investigations.
And the collaboration was also very much one of where there was both reporters on the ground and people in different countries.
Exactly. And especially Irish played a big role in...
That's the
Arab network for investigative journalism. And they brought the team together with journalists on the ground. And Forbidden Stories developed a methodology. It's like starting with those long lists of journalists and media workers who got killed, and then basically dividing the work to search for evidence. How did they get killed? Is there video footage? Is there photos before and after? Is there witnesses we could speak with? And then we pretty soon narrowed it down, because there were some cases where there was basically no evidence. Of course, there's also like technical challenges. There was not always cell phone coverage in the Gaza Strip. There was not always electricity. But also imagining, this was not us asking them to help us, but it was a constant back and forth. It was like, I've seen this photo that you have made at this point, but there's something missing there. Could you go back and make a photo from a different angle, because we need it for our OSINT analysis? And asking this from a journalist in a war zone.
Whose life is at risk.
Exactly. And who has other problems, like getting enough food for the loved ones, or simply surviving. Of course, that is challenging.
You just mentioned pictures and OSINT. And what other types of evidence were available to you that you used in this investigation?
It was photos, videos, satellite imagery. Sometimes it was remnants of projectiles, like something leftovers that we could then analyze, that journalists on the ground took photos of in different perspectives, sometimes videos that we could then send to ballistic experts, to military experts, to simply get an understanding, what kind of projectile is it? Is it one that is used by Hamas as well? Is it some used by the Israeli military, or is it something else that we are misinterpreting as a projectile? Then there was also like witness statements. Simply journalists on the ground meeting people who have been witnesses of a certain attack and recording those conversations so that we could double check it afterwards.
Can you tell us a bit about how you combined all those different materials to reach your findings?
There were some cases where there was basically no evidence. It was like they died at home, full stop. There was not that much to find. But in some cases, we saw patterns. There was a bigger group of journalists who got killed by drones, for example. Then we started to investigate, what does it mean? What does, for example, an Israeli drone pilot see? Does he see those press vests that some of those journalists have worn at that point in time? We spoke with Israeli, but also with US drone pilots, and they told us, like, of course you see it. Some of them even told us, like, Israeli drones are the best drones out there currently. You see on the cameras, you can see some details as the color of your eyes, or if you're wearing a ring. So pretending not to see the press vest is a difficult argument, let's put it that way. But we also spoke with the Israeli military. We got into discussions, like we told them what we have found. We have, for example, seen a huge pattern or a huge group of journalists working for Al-Aqsa. That's a media outlet that is very close to Hamas, and it was also controlled by Hamas, being killed. And we asked them, like, did it play a role that they work for an outlet that is close to Hamas? And one spokesperson told us, like, well, we do not consider them journalists. Al-Aqsa journalists for us are part of Hamas. They are a legitimate target for us. Based on that statement, we then got back to like law experts, and they were like, no. this is not what international law tells you. Like, if you're a journalist and if you're not taking part in war, like if you're not picking up a weapon, you are not automatically or cannot be a target. And that was, by the way, a statement that was after our publication corrected by the IDF. They told us, like, well, yes, there was a spokesperson, but he was wrong, which was a weird correction, because in that call was not only that spokesperson, but also the boss of that spokesperson. So it was not the mistake of one IDF spokesperson, but at least of several.
And so based on the collection of all of this evidence, what were some of the things that you found out?
I think the most worrying pattern for me was that we have seen a huge portion of journalists who got killed while wearing the press vests. That is normally what you put on in a conflict zone to be not targeted you. But what we have heard from many Palestinian journalists was them telling us, like, we feel like wearing this vest is basically putting this target sign on yourself. There I would see something as a pattern, that the press vest is in reality ignored. This could happen once or twice by accident, but not more than a dozen times. We also have to think about the consequences, what it means. Of course, there's the human toll, which is horrible. It's individuals getting killed. But it also means something for us, I think, as a society, because there is no Western journalists in Gaza. They're not allowed to enter independently. The journalists who are on the ground are Palestinian journalists, and they are killed in a rapid number. So that means that there's less and less journalists who can tell what's going on there, what it means for the civilians on the ground, what it means for children, for women, for the elderly. And that means that we are missing, or the window for us looking into the Gaza Strip is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And that means we are not seeing what is happening there anymore. And I consider journalists as the first witness of history. And that means those witnesses are getting less and less and less. And I think we all know what is happening when powerful institutions have the sense and the feeling that there's no one looking.
Would you also say that that's Israel's goal in doing so?
I think it might play a role, but it's hard to prove, because that would mean to see an order. We have not seen an order of any commanders ordering soldiers to kill journalists, to basically silence journalism in the Gaza Strip. In the end, the result is what we are seeing.
I guess you asked for comment, though.
We asked, and
what did they say?
The IDF told us repeatedly that they're not deliberately targeting journalists.
But at a certain point, you published all these findings, and then the story is out there. What happened?
I think the most important result was that there was a discussion, that there's something going on that is not normal, and that has a lot of consequences for our view on what's going on in the Gaza Strip. And for the Palestinian journalists on the ground, I think the most important result was they felt seen. For the first time, that's at least what some of them communicated afterwards to us, is like, for the first time, they had the impression that journalists around the world have not forgotten them, because that was their immediate feeling in the first weeks and first month of the war. They had the feeling like, for the past decades, they worked for Western media, for media all around the world. They helped them to make amazing and award-winning documentaries and reportings. But as soon as the war began and the killing started, they got forgotten. And that was changed. And I think there is other journalists picking up the Gaza Project reporting and also questioning the narrative of the IDF. There's more law experts stepping forward and demanding consequences. For example, the United Nations Special Rapporteur Irene Khan also asked for investigations. So you see more pressure on the Israeli military to basically investigate those cases themselves.
Your collaboration didn't end with the Gaza project. You also had a follow-up story, which was about Daniel G., a sniper in the Israeli military who had previously been residing in Germany. How did this person first come to your attention?
We heard of a video on Twitter, or it's now called X, that alleged that a young man from Munich serving in the IDF as a sniper shot unarmed civilians in the Gaza Strip. This was, of course, something that raised our interest because we are Munich-based. It's the allegation of a war crime. What was interesting for us is because there's many such allegations, but in this case, there was video footage.
And what did the evidence suggest that he had done?
First of all, there was a YouTube video posted by an Israeli soldier where you could see the killings, where you could see, for example, one individual who is seemingly unarmed trying to drag away a dead body from a street and is getting shot dead. So we had that footage. Then there was another footage that was an interview with an Israeli soldier that was conducted by a Palestinian journalist and a person that he worked with, an Israeli. And they interviewed an Israeli soldier under the pretext of doing a documentary about the IDF and its heroes in the Gaza war. And then at a break of the video, when the soldier thinks or thought that they would have stopped the recording, they showed him exactly that YouTube video where you could see civilians getting killed. And he was like, yeah, it's me and my colleague, my Semet, that's the Israeli word for his partner. That was us. We then decided, okay, now we have this allegation. Let's go on the ground. So with the help of one Palestinian journalist, we could identify where those videos have been taken, and we could also find the position of snipers, but also came to the conclusion that we have to verify it independently, so that's why we analyzed the full video. That we even made a German scientific institution, the Fraunhofer Institute, did a very expensive, unfortunately, analysis of the whole video if there was an artificial intelligence manipulation and stuff like that. They didn't find anything. But we also wanted to find the exact place where this all allegedly took place, and we found it. We found a building where those soldiers have been positioned in. We found the place where, at a certain point in time, several weeks after the IDF entered the Gaza Strip, several civilians, according to witnesses, have been killed. We found the names of those men that have been shot at this point. We also got their death certificates, and it all matched. It matched exactly with the witness statements, and matched exactly with that time frame where we geolocated them in that area.
And what we're speaking about here involves alleged war crimes.
Exactly. And all the legal experts we spoke with told us, like, this is obviously a rescue operation. You do not cannot kill someone who is trying to rescue someone or withdraw like a dead body. Even the Asha Kasha, he's called the home philosopher of the IDF, and he's the one who co-wrote the manual for Israeli soldiers. When we told him about this case, he was like, if someone is collecting a dead body, this is definitely not someone you must shoot it. This is not what is supposed to be expected from an Israeli soldier. Neither the contrary, a responsible Israeli soldier should not shoot at such a person. We know that soldier went to school in Germany. He is registered, I would say, 3 kilometers away from my home. So that was, for us, an interesting fact and very highly relevant fact, because it was not only like a member of the Israeli military, but there was a connection to Germany. By law, Germany would be obliged to investigate allegations of war crimes if there's high probability that that person is currently in Germany or might re-enter Germany soon. That later fact is, in my opinion, the crucial part, because that soldier, Daniel G., is still registered in Munich. So I would suppose that he is entering Germany in the near future.
And what was the response by the German authorities about all this?
The German Federal Prosecutor's Office did not even launch an official investigation. But so far we have not seen it, despite the UN General Secretary Guterres asking for an investigation. Several politicians in Germany asking for an investigation. There's several criminal complaints against this sniper. And yet there's no official investigation.
Investigating Israel's war on Gaza as a German journalist, how do you feel that Germans' history affects reporting on this topic?
From the perspective of being a German and the German history, I think the German history, the Holocaust, puts a certain obligation on Germany and also on the German population. I think whenever we see allegations of a war crime, I think it's a duty as journalists to investigate it, to make it public if there is hints that it was true. And especially when it comes to the prosecutors, they should investigate it. Germany is known for applying the universal principle of international law. It's like German prosecutors, for example, indicted torturers from Syria, warlords from Africa. So I think there would be a logic to at least investigate this case.
How do you personally experience how in Germany, both in a journalistic community and as you describe also wider, the lack of criticism regarding these alleged war crimes? What did you experience?
To a certain extent as a citizen frustration, because I really believe in democratic institutions. I believe in also the work of the federal prosecutor in Germany, because they do normally good work. For example, when Russia invaded Ukraine, they immediately started working. They are working with Ukrainian investigators hand by hand, investigating alleged war crimes in this war. Then seeing that in the case of the Gaza war, there are some cases, this is not the only one, but this case I know very well, there's a lot of information out there. I don't expect them to take whatever we wrote as journalists for granted, but I would have expected them to at least look into it, question witnesses, and try to at least obtain some more information.
And did you also experience pushback when it comes to media outlets trying who would maybe publish or not publish such stories? Or
we saw several outlets publishing follow-ups on our investigation. That was great to see, but we saw in the aftermath, we saw some pushback, for example, when a very renowned Munich theater decided to pick up our investigation and host a panel discussion. And I was surprised and shocked to see what happened then, because we saw the Israeli General Consulate alleging the theater of supporting anti-Semitism, having crossed a red line. We saw the German or the Bavarian ombudsman to fight anti-Semitism alleging that this would be a propaganda event. This is also like touching our work. This worries me a bit because it shows you something about the atmosphere in which we are currently living in Germany. I think anti-Semitism is a huge problem, and it's a growing problem in Germany. But critically dealing with allegations of war crimes is, in my opinion, simply what we as journalists should do and what we as society should do. And if you do see or think that this is anti-Semitism, then you should put facts to this allegation. And so far, I haven't seen it. So my impression is currently that this is the argument of anti-Semitism is, at least in this case, used to silence the whole discussion about this case. And this worries me.
On that note, we'll leave it for today's episode. Thank you so much for this very interesting conversation, Frederik. And Lisa and I will be back soon for another episode.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.